Hey, welcome everybody to Balance the World with Dave Detman. My guest today is an old friend of mine and magician Zack Percell. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you being on and helping me practice. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, just give the audience a quick overview and introduction about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go over how you've been a magician with TNZ Magic for over 3 decades, performing all across the Midwest. You mainly do libraries and festivals and corporate events, but you talked even about cruise ships, and you've even been on 3 continents. So I'm anxious to hear all about that. You've also performing over 200 shows per year, which is a lot. And now you're even doing professional voiceover work, which we'll get to towards the end. It really sounds like you're staying busy.
I'm trying. Always trying to keep busy.
Yeah. Having fun with it?
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I think I consider myself to be the luckiest person around because I get to do what I love, and it
Mhm.
never really feels like work, So,
Right. Well, that's good.
so
Enjoying it is half the battle.
yeah,
If you're not enjoying it, why do it?
right.
Which is kind of what I want to talk about next is that, a couple reminders for my audience is that, even though we're not talking about any politics or world affairs today, I do like to try to tie in anything that we're talking about towards helping the human race establish a balance with our planet, which is what my balance of world idea is all about. So at the end, we might talk a little bit about that and
Sure.
mainly just how important, entertainment and enjoying life is, which is what we're going to talk a lot about with you today. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Laughter and imagination and just
mhm.
sort of escaping reality is sort of my goal with my audiences. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's important.
Mm-hmm. That's really what entertainment. One of the best things about entertainment is just helping people forget about their problems for a while
Right,
and just
right.
enjoy the night, enjoy their night out, enjoy the 2 hours you're in front of them.
Sure,
Whatever.
sure.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. My first question for you is just, how long you've been involved with magic and what made you get started.
Well, getting started, it's kind of a two-part story.
All
The
right.
first part was, I would say, when I was about 7 years old, approximately. I saw David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear when
Yeah.
I was a
I
kid. I
remember
saw
that.
that on TV. You remember that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that, of course, that made him sort of a household name overnight when he did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. My little
Right.
7-year-old self was like, wow, this is what I want to do. And I was really kind of hooked after that. And I found out shortly after that he constantly toured, and he did 500 shows a year, and he even does more than that nowadays. And but
Right.
he was coming to Rockford, which is where I live and where I was living when I was a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went to see him at the Coronado Theater. My dad took me to see him, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just amazing. And so that Christmas, I asked for a magic set, and I got the magic set, and then I forced my parents and my siblings to come up to my room and watch me do a magic show like once a week for
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
months. So until I got
Nice.
a little bit better at it. Yeah. Eventually the tricks all kind of wore out, and
Mhm.
I lost some of them and everything. And so I kind of tried some other things for a while that I wasn't good at, and so eventually I got back into magic. And that was later on when I was in fourth grade. We had
Okay.
moved to another neighborhood, and I started at a new school. And one of the first friends I made at the new school was surrounded by a bunch of kids at recess out on the blacktop one day. And I
Hmm.
went through there and to see what he was doing. And he had a little box. And in the box, there was a playing card. And he closed the lid and he said, "Watch this." And he snapped his fingers and opened it back up, and the card disappeared. And I was like, "Well, how in the world? How'd you do that?" And I said, I knew a little bit about some magic tricks from a few years
Mhm.
ago, but no clue. And so everybody left, and I asked him. He said, "I can't tell you how I did it, but I can tell you where you can get one of these things." So
Right.
I said, "What's this mysterious place?" And he said, "The toy section at Kmart." so,
Hmm. That
so
was
I
it, huh?
toy section at Kmart. So when my dad got home from work that day, and I begged him to take me to Kmart so I could get one of these things. So I did, and I
Mhm.
brought it back to school the next day, and I said, "Hey Pete, look, I got one of these things." And he said, "Ah, you're dedicated. You like this stuff." And I
Mhm.
said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, well, I'll tell you where you can get whatever magic you want to learn." So he
Mhm.
told me about a place in town. It was a magic shop. This was in This was right around 1987 or so,
Okay.
approximately. So there's a magic shop in town, right off of East State Street, in a
Mm-hmm.
little mall that nobody knows about called Eastwind Mall. And Eastwind Mall is still there. It's right behind the car dealerships near State and Mulford.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, there's a guy in there. He's like an old wizard. And his name is Rich, and he owns the shop. It's he and his wife, Patty. And he said, you go in there and he'll show you any magic trick behind the counter you want to see. And if you pay for it, he'll teach you how the trick is done and you go home with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I had a paper route at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad got home from work and I said, hey, we got to go to this magic shop. Coincidentally, my dad knew exactly what this place was. He had just been there because the reason my parents had moved to Rockford, they lived in Florida before they moved to Rockford, but he had gotten a job at Sunstrand Corporation.
Okay.
And so he had been there for many years. And right before this happened, actually, we had moved into a house that was like the biggest house on the street, and my parents were all
Mm-hmm.
excited to move into this nicer neighborhood compared to where we had lived before. And then he got
Okay.
laid off from his job. So he got laid off from Sunstrand, and I went to the magic shop because he knew the guy, because he was taking on odd jobs and he was trying to sell storefront signs at the time. And he had just been there to try to sell the owner of the magic shop a storefront sign like the week
Mm-hmm.
before. So he said, I know exactly where that is. So we went out there, and every weekend for the next many, many years, I would
Mm-hmm.
spend my weekends out there learning magic tricks from Rich at the Magic Manor and
Yeah.
building up this act. And
I was just going to ask you if you became his best customer after that.
I was a pretty good customer. I was spending all my paper out
I'll
money.
take that and that and that and that.
Yeah, because he said, he not only would teach the magic tricks, but he would also bring in lectures from all over the country. And these guys, you'd sit in a class, on a Saturday afternoon, and go out
Mm-hmm.
there for a couple hours. For the first hour would be a magician showing us his act. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second hour, he would teach the act. And you go there and you spend like $35 for a ticket,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to watch this act and then learn the act and then decide
Mm-hmm.
what tricks would fit your act and what you could do to make them your own, make them different. Because
Right.
that's kind of the whole key. Because people always ask, like, where do you learn this stuff? Well, we
Yeah.
learn it from each other. We bounce ideas
Right.
off each other, and then we make them our own. So,
Well, that's a good segue into my next question: is that how'd you get into it to where you wanted to do it professionally? And how like TNZ got started, and maybe even your first payday when you first started actually doing it professionally.
yeah. So, my very first payday was, I think, just, $5 at my neighbor friend's birthday party or something
That's
like
good.
that.
Hey,
Yeah,
a
that's
paycheck's a
that.
paycheck.
That's right. That's how it started. And then I started doing, with these tricks I was learning, I started doing, I would hand write out flyers, and my dad got me business cards made. I was fortunate enough to have parents that were very encouraging, because
Mm-hmm.
I literally knew other magicians whose parents disowned them because they said they wanted to do magic for a
That's too
living.
bad. That's
Yeah,
too
and
bad.
it's kind of for various reasons. Some reasons you would probably never guess. Some parents were ultra religious and they didn't understand that magic was just sleight of hand and trickery as entertainment. And they thought it was the devil's work, kind of thing. And I know, and it's like we laugh about it. I laugh about it, but at the same time, it's really, I
It's
mean, that's a
voodoo.
really,
Do you
yeah.
still get people out there, man? This is some
Every
voodoo,
once in a while, it's rare. It's rare, but it does happen. And I've got all kinds of stories about it. But it's crazy because um, I would I started doing those smaller things, and then my dad also being encouraging. He got business cards printed up, and then
Nice.
for Christmas for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was working. And the next job he got was for a telephone, like a business phone communication company, like selling telephone systems or something for businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
he was at work one day. And he heard, because you asked how TNZ started, how that whole
Yes.
business name started.
Yeah.
He was at work one day, and this was following the weekend where I performed at his company's Christmas, or not Christmas party, the company picnic, summer company picnic or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
or maybe it was sometime after that or whatever. It had to have been sometime after that. But they were talking about it. My dad and another coworker. Well, the insurance rep for the company, for the company's insurance, was in the room nearby, and he overheard my dad talking to this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And the insurance rep came over to my dad and said, "Did I hear you say that your son's a magician?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "My son's a magician too." And he said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah." So he started telling him, well, he's been practicing magic for a little while, and he's just getting ready to do his first paid gig. And so he asked how old he was, and turned out his son was only a couple of years, about a year and a half younger than I was. And so he asked what school he went to, and turned out we both went to West Middle School. I was in 8th grade, and his son was in 7th grade at
Okay.
West. And those were I went there the first 2 years that it became a middle school, when it stopped being a high school. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so they were like, "Oh, we should get our boys together," and I bet they'd hit it off. And so that's exactly what happened. The first time I went over to Todd's house, which he
Mm-hmm.
only lived a few minutes away from me, was it's easy to remember that first time because it was that night that Mike Tyson lost for the first time. It was his we went over
Oh,
there. His dad
I
his
think
dad made
everybody
us.
remembers that night.
Yeah, everybody remembers that. As soon as I got there, the fight was starting, and he said, "Okay, boys, come in here. We're gonna watch this fight before you guys start talking magic." So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we watched the fight, and then we went to his room, and he showed me the magic tricks he had, and I told
Mm-hmm.
him about the stuff I had, and we turned out we were both big Penn and Teller fans,
Mm-hmm.
and Siegfried and Roy fans, and so we started talking. We hit it off. We became best friends instantly, and we started
Mm-hmm.
talking about putting together a duo act. And it took about a year. We spent like for several months. He would come with me to shows that I did, and I would go with him to shows that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, the stuff was advertised with putting business cards and handmade flyers on bulletin boards at the Rockford Public Library, which is how I got my first and longest running library client, Rockford Public Library. Still to this day,
Okay.
about 40 years late, almost 40 years later, I still perform for the
Nice.
Rockford Public Library every year. Yeah, and so
Very cool.
yeah, so it kind of snowballed into that until we put an act
Mm-hmm.
together that we decided to give the cheesy name The Magical Adventures of TNZ. His name was Todd Ripplinger, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm Zack Percell. So
Yeah.
TNZ, it sounds like TNT. It sounds like dynamite. So yeah, we put this act together, and that's what we started doing all over
Cool.
town, and all over the area, Midwest and everything.
Right. Well, how long did it take you to really start getting good at it to where you started expanding outside of Rockford? Like, what do you like most about it? And, maybe even start describing your act a little bit.
Yeah, so when I was working solo, I was doing kind of like I was taking kind of small close-up prop tricks and trying to do them in the biggest possible venues as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that worked out well, sometimes it didn't. But back then,
Mm-hmm.
it was tough to do big venues because you had to have clients that had like a sound system, because a kid
Mm-hmm.
working with little magic props that were normally done for
Mm-hmm.
close-up magic, because I didn't, I had a
Right.
paper out, I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend.
Right.
It was very difficult to do big venues because you got to have a wireless microphone. Really, I
Sure.
mean, if you're
Sure.
some people do it without a wireless mic, but I never like
Right.
I move around too much. I'm hyper and I'm all over the place when I
Mm-hmm.
perform. And a PA
Mm-hmm.
system, and back then that stuff was so expensive. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
couldn't. It was
Oh
thousands
yeah.
and thousands of dollars to get anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Todd and I started working together, we didn't have that stuff. We had to learn to project our voices. We went to high school together at Auburn, and we were in Kappa Theater, so we did plays, and so we
Start
learned
yelling your show.
yelling. Yeah, we had to learn how to project and yell, and we had a tough theater director. My drama class teacher was a really nice guy, John Slager, and but then we'd get into plays, and I had this theater director, Gordon Odegaard. Anybody who went to Auburn for many years knows these names, and
Mm-hmm.
and he was a tough guy, and he was just always like, Todd was really good at projecting, and he was just a natural actor. He was super talented. and I wasn't as good at anything as he was. I wasn't as good. And so it was always, Mr. Odegaard is always like, you need to pretend you're Todd Ripplinger. You can project like him, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we wanted to do the big stuff. And another talent that Todd had was he was good at building stuff. And so he bought these books from the magic shop that taught how to build the big stage illusions that the big, like Siegfried and Roy and David Copperfield did on stage, not the super huge ones, but the big stage ones that were pretty common, like the, sawing someone in half kind of box, or, the famous, the illusion that Houdini made famous called Metamorphosis, where he would lock his wife into a trunk, put handcuffs and put her in a bag and put her into a packing crate and lock it up. And then he would get in front of it, or as people do nowadays, get on top of it with a curtain, lift the curtain up and drop it, and then they switch places.
Reminds me of the movie Prestige. That's something I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So great movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, it was.
So he started building these big illusion props for our show, and he bought a van, and that's when we started like touring all over the Midwest, basically doing these big illusion shows. We were younger, and we were in our. This was starting in high school. We were doing this, and then all through high school and into our very early 20s, we were doing this. And that was a lot of fun doing the big illusion shows. But it was two of us. Usually if a magician's doing that, it's the magician, and then they have to hire assistants. We were able to kind of act as each other's assistant. We didn't really need to hire other people. And sometimes we would have like one person, like a female assistant, help us out. And so like my girlfriend in high school would help out, or another friend, and so that was something that we would do. So, but then so basically I ended up going back to doing solo parlor magic, and I guess I'll explain this story now because it has to do with the TNZ thing.
Sure.
So we eventually shortened the name from Magical Adventures of TNZ to just TNZ Magic, Todd and Zack Magic. And there was a period of time after high school, Todd, he graduated, and then he pretty much immediately went to Columbia College in Chicago, and he majored in video, I guess, editing and production, video production.
Okay.
I guess that's the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
When he was in high school, however, he dated an exchange student from Japan. And he became fascinated with Japanese culture. And so he minored in Japanese language at Columbia College and majored in video production.
Oh.
And so after he graduated from Columbia College, and during that time, it was fun because we were doing shows in Chicago. He was getting us gigs like at Columbia College and other things in Chicago. So we were doing a lot of work in the city. And then after he graduated from college, he moved to Japan for a year and did something. It's kind of like an exchange teacher program instead of exchange students. It's called the JET program. And he became an English teacher in Japan for a year, an assistant teacher, because he was super smart. He got out of college and he was fluent in Japanese. He could speak without even, they said he didn't even have an accent when he was in Japan. Yeah. Super smart guy. And which he was super smart, super responsible and everything, which kind of is important for the rest of the story. So basically what happened was after that, when he got back from Japan, he was hired to work out at one of the local TV stations as the master controller out there. He got a job really quick, and he was working out there with a guy that's a good friend of mine now, Eric Wilson, from the news. Yeah. And so they worked together out there, and it was great. He ended up getting called from a classmate of his from Columbia College who said he was starting a video production company out in Maui, and he offered Todd a job to move to Maui.
Nice.
Well, by this time, he was dating a different girl from Japan, because he met somebody on a flight out to Japan,
Mm.
and so they started dating, and he ended up. She was still living in Japan at the time, but he ended up moving out to Maui, and it was kind of funny because he said, out of all of the people, that his family and everything, that he had to tell he was planning on taking this job, I was the last person that he told. He was more nervous about telling me than telling his whole family that he was
Sure.
moving to Maui, because we had
Sure.
been business partners for almost a decade. We'd been
Right.
working together, and so he was nervous about how I was going to react. And so I
Sure.
was just like, hey dude, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to go live in Maui.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend in Japan had always talked about how she wanted to move to Hawaii, so it was
Mm.
just like perfect for them. So I said, no,
Right.
no hard feelings at all. You got to do what you got to do. I said, that sounds amazing. In fact, if I can get my act together, maybe I'll move out
Right.
to Maui. And he was there, and he shortly, several months after he got there, he actually switched jobs and started working with a bigger production company out
Mm.
there. And it was the type of company that, like, when corporations have awards, things for their customer, not their customers, for their employees, they'll like fly them out to Maui and do, have somebody video these
Nice.
incentive programs and stuff. So that's a lot of what they did. And
Right.
he had a blast out there for months. Just like, he would call me up and he'd be like, oh, guess who I just saw? I just saw Woody Harrelson riding his bike again, just past where I live, and, oh, just
Hmm.
saw Arnold Schwarzenegger today with his entourage of people. Oh, there's Jennifer Love Hewitt sunbathing over here. He's always seeing celebrities and stuff where he was.
That's pretty
He was
cool.
having a blast. Yeah. And then, a guy that he did side work, which was building websites, that he just kind of did it on the side. And there was a guy that he met who was a realtor, and a surfer, who he
Hmm.
built a website for, and they became close friends. And this guy started teaching Todd how to surf.
Mm.
And so I was working at I had a part-time job. I was broke, working at MCI, selling long distance phone service to
Mm.
people during this time. And he was out in Maui living it up and everything. And
Right.
one day he called me on a Saturday when I was working, and he said, yeah, there's this thing that happens every November. That toward the end of November, he said, every year these big waves, I forget what it's called, this rash of waves come down from Alaska, and they pound Maui, just
Mm.
hit Maui really hard. And he said that's when all the film crews go out and
Mm.
video the pro surfers out there, because they're
That's
gonna.
the phenomenon from Point Break.
Yeah,
Sounds
Point
like.
Break, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm pretty
Huh.
sure that's probably where and when that was probably filmed, most
Mm.
likely, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, are you going to go surfing?" Because he said that's coming like next week. He said, "No, no, I'm not. I'm an amateur. I'm not good enough to surf yet, but I'm going to go out there with my video camera and catch some good video of people surfing
Hmm.
out there." So, and it was a thing where, like, every Saturday afternoon he would call me. He would call his mom and his brother, and he would call his dad and his stepmom. And
Mm.
then every night before he'd go to bed, he'd call his girlfriend, who was now his fiance. They had just gotten, in late October, sometime in no, early October, right after his brother's birthday, they had gotten engaged. She
Okay.
flew out there to Maui to be with him, and he had proposed to her, and they were planning on getting married at Disneyland in about a year and a half after that.
Hmm.
So we ended up, uh, talking on that Saturday, and then that Thursday, or was it Tuesday? Yeah, it was that Tuesday. I get a text message from him, and he said, "Hey, I'm all excited. I got this new phone. It was a flip phone, and he said the phone has a camera built into it, so you can take pictures with your phone now." I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah." And I said, "Yeah, I remember seeing those in Japan when we were in Japan. I'd
Mm.
visited him in 2001 when he was in Japan for a couple of weeks." And he was all excited about. He took a picture of a rainbow going over a highway, and
Right.
so anyway, so Saturday comes, and I didn't hear from him, but it was kind of a crazy day, and I didn't think about it. It was the first Saturday I didn't get a call from him in a while. And so Sunday comes, and I had to work at this point. Yeah, I was still working at MCI, and Sunday comes, and I get a call from his brother in the early afternoon, his older brother, Mike, who was just about a year and a half older than me. And Mike asked if I had heard from Todd. And I said, yeah, wait, no, he didn't call me on Saturday. He usually calls me on Saturday. I said, I got a text message from him on Tuesday with a rainbow. He said, yeah, I got that. He said he sent that to everybody. But he said, this is a weird thing. He said, nobody heard from him yesterday. We didn't hear from him. I said, oh, really? That's odd. I said, what about Ikuko, his fiance? And he said, yeah, I just talked to her. The last time she heard from him is Thursday night. And she said he calls her every night before he goes to sleep. I said, okay, this is strange. And he said, yeah, we're really kind of worried because his boss said he didn't show up to work yesterday. And he's never been a no-call, no-show to anything. He's always super responsible, shows up. So I just, like, wow, that's unlike him. So he said, we're just trying to figure out what could possibly be going on, but we're going to see what happens. His boss is going to call us tomorrow if he doesn't show up on Monday morning for work. So Monday morning comes, and I get a call from his brother. He didn't show up to work. He said, my mom, dad, stepmom, and I, we're all booking a flight. We're going to go out and look for him, heading out to Maui. So I said, this is crazy. We're scared. I'm trying to call him, and it's just going right to his voicemail,
Sure.
So, yeah,
Sure.
so I ended up kind of going throughout the day, and I told him, man, I wish I could come out with you. There's no way I can. I'm broke, I didn't make any money. I wasn't doing many solo shows at all at that point in time. I wasn't doing much. I was just working my telemarketing day job. So he said, if you want to come with us, your family, we'll get your ticket. My dad will buy your ticket or, whatever. So I said, if that's possible, and then they did. So I flew out with the family, and we basically, long story short, we pieced it all together. Unfortunately, Todd, it appeared, saw these waves and couldn't resist giving it a shot. He went out there to video with his video camera, but he couldn't resist giving it a shot, and it was too much for him to handle. And somebody found his surfboard washed ashore at a beach. There was a beach. He lived in a town called Kihei, Maui, and he worked in a town about 45 minutes north of there called Lahaina. And there's a surfing spot in Lahaina called Breakwall. And he had been out there. They found his car in a kind of buried in a parking lot. He had this little tiny, I forget what kind of car it was. But a kid had found his surfboard washed ashore, just figured somebody left their surfboard, and he took it home. We didn't know about that until Thanksgiving. This was 2003. And they had, by the time we got there were divers searching the water for him and everything. And we got his car towed into the parking garage of the company he was working at. And Ikuko flew in from Japan, and she opened up the trunk, and she just collapsed to the ground because we were hoping, we hadn't been able to find his cell phone or anything. So we figured wherever he is, his cell phone's going to be. So we got the trunk open, and she found his towel in there, an unrolled towel, and his phone was in his towel. And that was just like, oof, yeah, we know he had gone into the water and never came back. So yeah, it's still, that was in 2003, 22 years later, it still feels weird, but
that was your original partner from the
yeah,
TNZ. That was your original partner from.
He was, I guess he was the partner that I worked with for the longest period of time. When I first started, I told you about Pete, who got me into magic. We kind of dabbled together, and we did a couple of birthday parties together. And then funny coincidence story, because my life is full of them. I met this. I became friends with another guy named Mark Muraski, and he was really into magic. He was fascinated by magic. But he had just gotten into, I'm trying to make sure I get this right. He was also interested in music. He wanted to play guitar as well. Well, we started doing magic together, and we performed a couple of parties together and stuff. We kind of put a little bit of a duo act together, and then he
Mhm.
lost interest in magic and became interested in music. Before I knew Todd, we all went
Mhm.
to the same school, elementary school as well. Before I met Todd, we went to Conklin Elementary School.
Mhm.
Before I met Todd, Todd had been into music, but then got into magic.
Hmm.
Todd and Mark knew each other, but I didn't know Todd yet.
Hmm.
Todd ended up trading his music stuff to Mark, his guitar and everything, and Mark gave Todd his magic stuff. And then I
Hmm.
later met Todd and found
Okay.
this out, so Todd really became like the third
Mhm.
partner that I worked with in magic, and then Mark went on to
Yeah.
be a musician. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, so it's kind of
So,
an interesting.
so sorry to keep talking about it, but so
Oh,
did they ever find him from the
no,
surfing?
no,
Really?
his body was never found. They pieced
Really?
together. So yeah, so his friend Matt, who had taught him how to surf, uh, we talked to him, and he said that the only thing he could think of, the actual location, which was a little further down south from Breakwall, he said
Hmm.
that the location that the kid found a surfboard, which the reason we got that back was because they put Todd's face and a picture of his surfboard on the news, on the local news, said this is a missing surfer,
Hmm.
we're looking for him. The kid who brought the surfboard home had it in his basement. His mom saw the news and said, "Hey, that surfboard you found at the beach the other day belongs to a missing
Hmm.
surfer. You need to turn that into the police." So he did,
Oh.
and that's how we got the surfboard back.
Oh.
But the divers, they never found him.
Nothing,
Matt
huh?
said that he thinks what most likely happened where he was, there were some really shallow coral reefs in that area.
Mm.
And he thinks what happened was with these big waves, they come in and then all of a sudden they would lull for a little while. And then
Mm.
they would suddenly pick back up again
Hmm.
unexpectedly. So what he thinks
Hmm.
Todd probably did, because he went out alone, he would go out early in the morning, surf a little bit, and then he'd go to work because
Hmm.
his job was right up the street from where he surfed. So he thinks that Todd was videoing the surfers, saw one of these lulls, and thought, "Oh, I can go out there now
Saw
and
the
say I
little ones and thought he could handle
yeah,
it. And
thought he could handle it." And then
mm.
one of these big waves just came up out of nowhere and probably just took him down right into the coral reef, and he probably
Mm.
didn't even know it hit him, and then washed him out into the sea. So,
Sorry to hear that, man. That's
yeah,
a
thanks.
tragic story. Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough. He was like a little
Hmm.
brother to me.
Yeah.
I kind of referred to him as my younger older brother. He was
Hmm.
a little younger than me, but he was always wiser and smarter and
Hmm.
more mature than I ever was.
Sure.
And so, and we were buddies, we got along really
Hmm.
well, and we
Hmm.
had fun working together for all the years that we worked together, and
Hmm.
I'm still very much in contact with his family. In fact,
Nice.
his dad got my wife a job where she works now, at the insurance company, and which is what has allowed me to do magic full time. Because after
Hmm.
that, kind of getting more back to your question about
Hmm.
how I started to make this my living and the act itself, I knew
Hmm.
going back to solo again, I wasn't going to be able to do the big stage illusions. Um,
Hmm.
and I didn't have I had a van for a little while, but that stuff takes a lot to haul around and set
Hmm.
up and everything. So I started doing more anything that I could fit in my sedan, the
Hmm.
parlor act. So I
Hmm.
started kind of doing the thing that magicians do most commonly these days. We call it the pack small plays big act. Anything
Sure.
that's small that can fit in a small case or whatever, but could play on a stage in front of a bunch of people. That's
Right.
what I try to work into my
Right.
act. Those are the kind of things I do first.
Well, nice tribute to your friend, man. That was a
Yeah.
nice story, and I mean, sad story, but a nice tribute to remember him by, and always keep him in your mind as you're doing your shows. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's kind of what I've always said. I always feel like he's right there, at my
Hmm.
side when I'm
Hmm.
performing, and that's why I kept, I officially named the company. I didn't have an official name for the company until after this happened in 2003,
Hmm.
and I called the name of the company TNZ Magic now. So
Well, good for
I still
you.
keep his initial in it and everything. So.
Well, that's nice of you to do that, man. Nice tribute to your friend. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, and how do you do your show now? Just by yourself? And what does more of your show look like now since then?
Yeah, so my current show is a solo show, and the
Mm-hmm.
nice thing is technology also allows some of that
Mm-hmm.
to be a thing because, like, one of the things that I like, as I mentioned, I grew up in the era of the David Copperfield
Mm-hmm.
influence stuff, and even though I don't do the big stage illusions anymore like David Copperfield did, I've always loved the theatrical premise of having background music, throughout my show. And actually, just before Todd was killed in the accident, I finally started. I started doing some more stuff, but I finally got to a point where realized that you can purchase, like, I had discovered eBay, in the early 2000s.
Sure.
I'm like,
Sure.
oh, you can actually purchase some pretty decent sound equipment online now. It's cheaper
Mm-hmm.
than, and the give or take, there's the good and the bad with it, that
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go to the local music shop anymore and spend thousands of dollars on equipment that I can buy on
Mm-hmm.
eBay for hundreds of dollars,
Right.
And
Right.
so I started doing that. I started researching, like, what is available to me that I can step up and make the show more
Mm-hmm.
theatrical and
Mm-hmm.
and still keep it affordable.
Right.
So working in the parlor magic where I'm able to do sleight of hand on stage and I'm able to do, certain things that you don't have to be super up close. Plus having a reliable microphone, which I thought I
Mm-hmm.
had at that time, but it took a little bit more time to get a really good, reliable
Mm-hmm.
microphone because I like to have a
Mm-hmm.
wireless microphone.
Mm-hmm.
But then like you could get like a Fender Passport PA system. That was like the first like decent PA system that I
Sure.
bought that I could carry with me and set up quickly and use. And now there's so much more efficient stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started dabbling with everything I could, and then I started getting more and more shows. And it just kind of started snowballing, and I was working on my act as much as possible. And so now, I have for my family shows, I make a live dove appear at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the show or the end of the show in like smaller birthday parties. That's the finale, but it's the opening in the bigger
Mm-hmm.
family shows. I blow up a balloon and it pops and a dove appears in its place.
I was gonna
And
say, how do you use music and sound? You got like a lot of sound effects coming in with you,
yeah,
or along with music?
so that's a fun topic that has evolved over the years. So, like I said, I got that PA system, I got a microphone, but the hard part was is having music because I say I'm flying solo, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like you used to have a sound guy. You used
Yeah.
to have somebody who's controlling your sound for you because you can't. So when Todd
Mm-hmm.
and I worked together, we didn't have a PA system. We'd get a big boom box,
Mm-hmm.
and we would bring the boom box. It would be a dual cassette boom box. We would have, and this is how lots of people did this back in the 80s and 90s. We would have our music that we wanted to use in our show.
Mm-hmm.
Every cue, every song or bit of music would be on its own separate cassette tape. And
Right.
we'd have to put it in and just kind of like play it and pause it and just spin the thing back just to cue it up just right.
You have to
Then
get
we'd
your
have
pencil out to move the
yeah,
cassette.
the pencil, right. Yeah, that's how it was for years. And so we have a dual cassette deck in the boombox. So while one of us is introducing a routine, the other one would go over, grab a tape, put it in the tape deck, press play, and then they'd have to run over, stop it, pull it out, get the next one
That's
ready.
a lot of hassle, man. Holy
It
cow.
was. So then, and this was back in the early 2000s when we were still working together,
Okay.
was when something super exciting happened, which was the advent of the burnable CDs
Sure.
and digital music editing. So
Yeah.
of course, Todd was a big computer nerd. So he discovered this tech early on. He found out about it pretty early on, and so we discovered we could put all of our music on one CD, and we could even edit the music to make it fit our
Mm.
routine perfectly
Nice.
using. I think back then it might have still been Audacity audio
Sure.
editor.
Yep. That's
And
still around.
which it's still around.
Yeah.
I still use it for certain things in voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
And so So we started editing our own music, put it onto a CD, and then we could
Mm-hmm.
play that in a
Mm-hmm.
CD boombox, which was a huge. I mean, that was a game changer. Not to
Yeah.
have to mess with all these cassette tapes, but
Yeah.
it still, it still had its drawbacks.
Yeah.
And
Got to
then
perfect that timing, nice and perfect.
right, and it was good. It was good, and I think there's still some people that do that today. There's still some people that use that
Mhm.
tech. It's probably the only thing CDs are used for today. I don't
Sure.
know, maybe.
Sure.
But then shortly after Todd's time,
Mm-hmm.
um, other entertainers started coming up with their own ideas and ways that they could discreetly control and
Mm-hmm.
operate music themselves
Mm-hmm.
and sound effects and everything. And so back, like I don't remember 2007, 8, something like that. Don't
Mm-hmm.
remember for sure. There was a guy who came out with I'm not even going to mention the guy's name, but he
Okay.
came out with a really cool invention he had called the Virtual Sound Man, and it was a little box with a 2-digit LCD display on it,
Mm-hmm.
a radio, and RF remote control, and it would connect to a mini disc player because this was back when mini discs
Mm-hmm.
became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing would allow you to operate the track and the volume and play and pause on a mini disc. And then with the LCD display, you could set that up by your PA and you could see what track you were on.
Mm-hmm.
And so this thing was like $1,400,
Yeah.
but magicians and other entertainers who could afford it were
Mm-hmm.
buying it. I bought a couple of them secondhand. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't afford them brand new, but and they worked for really great for a little while, and then they would kind of start breaking down. They would stop working, and the guy who invented them and built them, he had a horrible reputation for his customer
Mm-hmm.
service. He was a
Sure.
he was just
Sure.
not a he wasn't a good
He
guy.
wanted to make the money and not back it up, you know.
And not back it up and
Yeah,
not deal
sure.
with it. Yeah, he had this guarantee warranty on it, but then the warranty costs you
No
still to
follow-through.
get things fixed.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then of course, Bluetooth became a
Mm-hmm.
thing. But then, and the other thing that he didn't want to do is when the iPod became a
Mm-hmm.
thing and started becoming
Mm-hmm.
popular, people were suggesting, hey, you should switch from mini disc and have this operate
Mm-hmm.
with iPod.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, that iPod, that's not going to go anywhere. That's not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he was
Apple.
wrong.
He was very
Wrong.
wrong about that. He did eventually switch to make it work with the iPods,
Probably
but
too late, but
it was kind of too late. And then
sure.
anyway, so I went through those, and I went through a couple of iterations of like
Mm-hmm.
using Bluetooth
Mm-hmm.
remotes with phones or whatever.
Well, let me ask you, how does that work? Do you have the whole show prepared and just let it run, or are you able to stop it and start it? Do you got like foot pedals? How does that work?
Right. So yeah, good question. So the thing that I'm using now that
Mm-hmm.
I started using a few years ago is something called an Audio Ape Pro, and what it is it's basically a major upgrade from what this other guy was doing with the Virtual Sound Man. And it has if I had it with me right now, I'd show you. It also has a radio remote, and it allows me
Mm-hmm.
to control play, pause, track forward, track backward, volume up, volume down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got the same sort of like LCD display on it, but
Mm-hmm.
you can also hook it up to an iPad or an iPhone, and you can see the track information, like the track name. You can see
Mm-hmm.
the progress of the track. So what I do is I built mine into a little case, and I have it sit down right below my speaker. And so I can just, from anywhere I am in the room, the theater, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, I can operate. I take the little remote and I put it in my
Mm-hmm.
pocket, and it's got those little the buttons you can feel like through your pocket. But I added to
Okay.
them. I put those little sticky plastic gem things that you can get at
Mm-hmm.
craft stores.
Yep.
I stuck those to the buttons so I can feel them in the pattern. And so all I
Okay.
do is I just rest my hand down at my side, and I can
Mm-hmm.
feel which button is volume, track,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and I can operate all the music,
Mm.
the sound
Nice.
effects, everything. Yeah, just right from
Okay.
while I'm talking, while I'm doing the
Right.
show. And that's one of the big questions people get giving me after my show is they say, "Wow, the magic was great, the show was great, but man, how did you stay on
Mm.
cue with that music
Sure.
throughout the
That's the
whole show?"
hardest part.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they
Oh yeah.
assume that I'm just like pressing play on a
Mm-hmm.
CD or something backstage, and I'm walking out, and the music is staying in
That's what I
time.
was wondering.
But
That was
yeah,
where my
yeah.
question came
And
from. Yep.
I said, no, nope, it's not, and I'm not that good, but I'm able to
All right.
operate it and control it with this thing. So that's one of the things that's great about technology is and
Mm-hmm.
these things too, you can also, there's more advanced versions and apps that you can use with it that can allow you to use that remote to also control lighting in a theater and all kinds of other
Mm-hmm.
different effects just by
Sure.
using this remote, and
Right.
I haven't even dug that deep into it. I don't
Right.
really use special lighting cues or anything. I don't know if I'm even
Yeah.
smart enough to dig that deep into that
It
stuff.
just popped in my head was, at first it was Geddy Lee with the bass and his keyboard and singing and, trying to do that. And then the one man band where the guy's kicking the bass drum with his foot and he's got
Yeah,
the
right.
tambourine and like that's got to be hard to coordinate all of that. So I bet
Yeah.
that took a lot of practice, didn't it?
And the thing is, it sounds simple, but it does take a little bit of practice.
Oh hell
Like
yeah.
there was some trial and error, and it's like first few months of using it, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, I kind of get into this, like I get nervous, panic mode, or am I going to do this right? Am I going to do it wrong? So sometimes I'll accidentally hit the wrong button, and I'll pause the music right in the middle of routine when I'm trying to turn the volume up or
Sure.
down.
That answers my question about how hard it is and how hard it is to coordinate your whole show. Let's get into your types of shows. Where you go, how big the venues, like how
Yeah.
far you travel to get there, and maybe some of your favorite spots.
Sure, sure. So, I do pretty much anything. Like I said, I started off doing birthday parties and assisted living facilities, but I do a lot of, like, this time of year is corporate Christmas party season. So I
Mm-hmm.
love doing let's see, a little bit of travel. I This Friday I'm going up to La Crosse, Wisconsin for a corporate Christmas party. And the
Mm-hmm.
only other, it's funny, I was just telling my wife earlier, the only other time I think, been to La Crosse, Wisconsin was probably about 10 years ago. I did a corporate Christmas party, and it just happened that it was at the exact same venue that I'm going to this Friday. So the same restaurant
Okay.
that it's going
Cool.
to be at, the banquet room there. But I do, oh man, I do full evening theater shows. I've performed
Mm-hmm.
my full evening show at let's see, in St. Charles. I did two theaters that are really close to each other, the Arcada Theater and the Moonlight Theater. I did about a
Nice.
2.5 hour show at the Moonlight Theater
Nice.
last April. And then I did about an hour one at the Arcada Theater last October, I think it was. So I don't do a whole lot of those, but I do those every once in a while. I
Mm-hmm.
just this past summer started doing cruise ship work, which is funny
That's cool.
because yeah,
That's cool.
it's fun. I've got friends that do cruise ships, and
Nice.
I always thought it would be fun to get into. And now that my
Mm-hmm.
kids are older, my son, my youngest, just turned 18,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have to worry about being around all the
Right.
time. And so I thought, oh, that'd be fun. And then I got contacted by
Oh
a
yeah.
cruise line and it's interesting because I didn't even realize that cruises existed on the Great Lakes. Like I thought it was only an
Oh yeah.
ocean
Yeah.
liner thing, but yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a cruise line called Victory Cruise Line. They booked me back in the summer, and it went really well. And they
Hmm.
immediately called me and said, "Hey, can you come back in 2 weeks and do it again?" And
Nice.
so yeah,
Awesome.
so they said, yeah, they loved it. So then they said, we're going to put
Mhm.
you on the regular schedule next summer. So they're
Nice.
going to have me do a whole bunch of them, hopefully coming up. But
Coming up this year then. Coming up
yeah,
this
this
year then
year,
you'll
yeah.
is that on Lake Michigan or you got to go all up to Superior or what?
So it starts on Lake Michigan. The cruise that I did a couple times this past summer, it started in Chicago, and then
Mhm.
they went like they touch all the Great Lakes, I think, and then they came
Mm.
back into Green Bay, and then I drove up to Green Bay and hopped on the ship when they were in Green Bay for a day, and
Hmm.
then I did the show there, and then I got off. So it wasn't during, but now they're talking about having me stay on the ship and do more stuff, and then like
Mhm.
letting me off in Canada because they go into Canada,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm. I
flying me
forgot my
back.
passport. I
Yeah,
can't go
right. So they said get a passport, get your passport updated if you didn't. And I didn't have my passport updated because
home.
the last time I had left, I performed. it's a whole other thing. I performed in Egypt, in Cairo, back in 2007. And the reason I did that is because my
It's cool.
brother, yeah, it was really cool. My
Yeah.
brother had moved to Egypt for many years, and he became an English teacher, kind of like what
Hmm.
Todd did, but it
Okay.
wasn't through that same program. He
Okay.
just moved there independently and became an
Mhm.
English teacher at a school, and then he became a principal
Nice.
at a school out there. And so I went out there to visit him and performed for the school. And then,
Hmm.
kind of like what I did when Todd was living in Japan, I flew out there
Hmm.
and performed for the school there. And
Hmm.
then, I did some strolling magic on the streets of Amsterdam because
Hmm.
I had a layover with the trip to Cairo.
Right.
So now I can say I've performed in Japan,
Hmm.
Netherlands, and Egypt. So so
Yeah, yeah, that counts, man.
it
That's
counts, right?
what
It
you
counts.
what you were saying. 3 other continents or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Those are the three other continents, you know.
Well,
But
so
yeah,
that's
it goes
four total. Four of
four
the seven
total,
total.
and
Yeah.
it goes into my promotional material. You know,
Hell yeah.
you know, it wasn't like running things, but I do have running
Hmm.
things. The last few summers, I've done right around 40 library summer reading programs in Illinois and Wisconsin. So I put together
Hmm.
a show for reading summer reading programs called Reading is Magic, and it's not an original title. It's something that's been used by magicians before for library reading programs. But I
Hmm.
put together this. It's a fun magic show for kids 3 and up, and it promotes reading and involves
Hmm.
visual magic, and my dove appears in it and everything, and
Nice.
they get to pet the dove at the end of the show and take pictures with them.
Right.
So that's one thing I do. And then every fall for the last 5 years,
Mm.
and going into the sixth year, because they already said they want me back, I do about 60 shows in 2 months
Oh
at
yeah, you mentioned that.
yeah, and it's a place called All Seasons Orchard, and it's in Woodstock. Now, people watching that are
That's right.
west of Woodstock,
Hmm.
they all know about Edwards Apple Orchard.
Edwards.
Yeah,
Edwards.
everybody
Sure.
knows about Edwards Apple Orchard, which we all,
Hmm.
we all grew up going to Edwards Apple Orchard. But everybody in Woodstock and into
Hmm.
Chicago, they know about All Seasons Orchard. And All Seasons Orchard is a huge place.
I
It's
was just
gig.
gonna say, how similar is it? Is it
It's
basically the same type of thing, or just bigger,
it's
or what?
it's a lot bigger. There's a lot more to do.
Hmm.
And nothing against Edwards. I like Edwards,
Hmm.
but
Edwards is
but
awesome.
Edwards is awesome, but All Seasons is amazing.
Really,
They've got it's just enormous. They got so
huh.
much stuff for the kids.
I'll
We
have to check
do
it out sometime.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. But I've got my
Hmm.
own stage out there that
Hmm.
hopefully is going to be getting a nice big update for next season. We're
Hmm.
talking about it. They're still trying to figure out the budgeting on it and everything.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just finished my 5th season of it just before
Hmm.
Halloween, and it's 3 shows a day, every Saturday, Sunday, and holiday. So
Okay.
I do noon, 2, and then 5 p.m.
Hmm.
And it's fun because they also, one of the things they do out there is they have pig races, and so
Hmm.
I get to MC the pig
Cool.
races too. So every other hour I'm emceeing pig races. So
That's
I
pretty
get to,
good.
yeah, they let me name all the pigs. So of course I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so I give them, I call them like Ham Solo and the Mighty Chewbacon and Hamakin Swinehogger and that kind of stuff.
That
So
sounds like a fun day. So yeah, take me through like when you're doing those shows. Do you just do your magic and see and people walk by and watch, or are you constantly messing with little kids like the Bushman that scares people and kind of explain your show when you're there? Sounds
yeah,
pretty neat.
yeah. So the stage has got a bunch of picnic tables in front of it, so people can
Hmm.
bring their lunch over and
And
sit
sit and
down
watch
and
you and sit and watch
yeah,
you.
and
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it's like at noon, 10 minutes before noon, I start like a 10-minute warning introduction. It's pre-recorded intro that I had some fellow voiceover friends do for me. And
Mm-hmm.
the Welcome to All Seasons Orchard, the magic show starring Zack Percell of TNZ Magic will be starting in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Get your family and friends, come on over, and then 5 minutes there's another one, and then 1 minute, and I'll kind of be out and about, like
Mm-hmm.
welcoming people over and bringing them in, and and
Do you do the balloon animals and give them
I
farm
don't
animals to kids or
I
something?
I used to do balloon animals. I've never done them
Uh,
there. I've never done them but I used to do balloon animals. I don't do those
okay.
anymore. I got tired of doing balloon animals.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't enjoy it anymore.
well,
But
when you're walking around mingling with people, are you just constantly joking around with them, or just
kind of.
promoting the show and hey, be over there at one, or?
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'll either do that or I'll just kind of hide out and eat some of the delicious snacks they have there, you know.
Hmm.
But
Sure,
otherwise,
sure.
I'm just kind of resetting because I do all three magic shows that I do out there are different. So
Hmm.
it's all different. So if people stay
Oh,
long enough and they come back to watch another show, they're going to
you
see a
do a
different
different
show.
show 3 times a
Yeah.
day, huh?
Yep,
Oh,
three
okay.
times a day.
All
And
right.
they're short. They're only like 25 minutes, 25 to
Hmm.
30 minutes each.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a different show each time. And
Hmm.
so I just basically I do a show at noon to about 12:30, and then I
Hmm.
talk to people after the show, and then I get ready. I head down to where the pig races are, and
Hmm.
then fire up the microphone down there, and I announce the pig
Yeah.
races. Those only last like 10 minutes or so. It's
Sure.
four groups of four pigs that race.
Okay.
And then I'm just back and forth all day. I just go back,
Hmm.
get ready to do the next magic show.
Hmm.
And yeah, I do that all day, all
Hmm.
weekend, from the end of August. It's usually the last weekend of August until the weekend before Halloween.
Hmm.
And like I say, I just finished up my 5th year out there, and
Hmm.
they said they want me back next year. So it's a fun gig. It's a
I
lot
was
of
just
fun.
saying those sound like fun days,
Yeah.
which kind of leads me to my next question is how much comedy do you try to put in and how much do you try to make people laugh versus just, blowing their mind and freaking them out?
Yeah, that's a good question because when I started, uh, growing up in the 80s and with David Copperfield being pretty much the main influence we all
Hmm.
had, this is before the internet, before you could see all the many magicians
Hmm.
that are out there. It was like David Copperfield had his annual special, and back then he had comedy in his show, but he was more of a
Hmm.
dramatic,
Sure, yeah.
hoses
The
in the
hocus
face.
pocus, the hocus
Yeah.
pocus.
And so, yeah, so that was what I kind of grew up on. And as
Right.
I got older, I realized people look at this face and they don't take this seriously. I'm
Mm.
more of a goofy looking
Sure,
guy with,
sure.
and I love comedy. I grew up, I grew up being heavily influenced by like Monty Python and,
Hmm.
and I love
Hmm.
stand up comedy. And so
Hmm.
I, I knew that I probably was going to have to interject quite a bit of comedy into it. And I
Hmm.
always thought I
Sure.
was a funny person, but I think there were periods of time where I thought I was funnier than I actually was, but I try. And so I
Is
so
this thing
so
on? Is this thing on?
right. And I think I really decided that I really wanted to put more comedy into my show
Hmm.
because of influence from one specific magician. Um, back in long story short, one of my favorite stories to tell other magicians
Hmm.
is back in '98. Todd and I were he had found out that the Society of American Magicians, one of the big magic clubs,
Hmm.
um, was having their big convention in Las Vegas at Bally's, 1998, and he wanted to go. And I said, "Hey, I'd love to go, but I was broke. I was just out of high school, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to go to this convention too. But I was like, I got to save up money. I got to come up with money.
Hmm.
Well, we registered too late. We couldn't get into the convention, but we
Hmm.
decided we were going to go to Vegas anyway, and we were going to
Sure.
get a room at Bally's and just hang out and check because we knew this was the big convention. Like everybody,
Hmm.
all the top names were going to be there. So,
Hmm.
and I was 20 years old. I was like 4 months away from being 21, and he was like
Oh.
18, something like that. Yeah. And
Hmm.
so his dad flew out with us. He flew us out there. So it was the three of us. And during that time, this was right around the time where David Copperfield's kind of reign on TV had
Hmm.
ended,
Okay.
and there was a guy out of Canada, Gary Allais, who was producing big magic shows on network TV, and this
Hmm.
one he was doing was called The World's Greatest Magic,
Hmm.
and the they did, I don't know, 3 years in a row or something. They did this, just a one-time annual special.
Hmm.
The one person that appeared on that show every year was a magician by the name of Mac King.
Hmm.
And he's a guy from Louisville, Kentucky. and his best friend, who he grew up with and had a duo act with, was a guy named Lance Burton. And Lance Burton was one of the most famous magicians in the world at that time. He had his own show in Vegas. At first at the Hacienda for years, then they tore the Hacienda down. He moved to the Monte Carlo. And so these two were best friends, but Lance's career had taken off. Lance had even had some TV specials. And Matt King, his biggest claim to fame was he was the only magician that was on these TV specials each time. And his spot on the TV special was he was a comedy magician, and they would do a bit where he would, before each commercial break on this show, they would switch over to him, and it was called the Matt King School of Magic. And he would be sitting out. He's this like nerdy looking, like super nerdy guy, wears a plaid suit, you know.
Sure.
Like super. Him. Yeah, you remember Mac? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So and yeah, you would have seen him because you lived in Vegas. So because I'm getting to that part too, because this was before he had his own Vegas show. So which was at Harrah's for many, many years. So Mac's spot in the show, he'd be sitting at the pool of one of the hotels, one of the resorts, and there would be all these like models in bikinis around him acting like they're all into him, you know, like, oh yeah, this guy's so hot. He's a hot magician. And he was this nerdy guy. And so he would do a magic trick. Yeah. So he'd do a magic trick, and then and it'd fool them with the magic trick, and they would act all amazed. And then they'd go to commercial, and when they came back from commercial, he would teach the magic trick. It was just a really simple magic trick that you can learn from a kid's magic book or something. So that's how I knew Matt King. And so when we went to Bally's to this convention, we checked in at Bally's. We got to our room, and we were going to head out and just check things out. So Todd, we got to the elevator hallway. Todd said, oh, I forgot my wallet in the room. I got to run back and get my wallet. So he goes back to get his wallet, and then right around the other corner of the hotel, Matt King comes walking around the corner while Todd's dad and I are standing there waiting. And I'm like, oh, Matt King. And he says, oh, hi. I said, oh, you don't know me. I'm just a fan of yours, you know. And I said that, he said, oh, you must be in town for the convention. And I said, well, this is what happened. So I told him the story that we registered too late and we couldn't. And by this time, Todd comes back around the corner and he's like, oh, Matt King. Wow. And so we're talking to him. We get on the elevator. We tell him the whole story that we wanted to be here for the convention, but we can't be, this and that.
We don't have tickets. Can you help us out?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, we didn't even say all that, but he did.
Nice.
So yeah,
you hinted it.
Right. So yeah, I guess we probably did. Unintentionally, really.
Sure.
I didn't really expect him to be able to do anything about it. So, so we went through the weekend, you know, because this was like a Thursday or Friday or whatever it was. We went through the whole weekend. Todd and I had our adventures in Vegas. This was my first time in Vegas. It was Todd's second time in Vegas. And so on Sunday morning, we went out, had breakfast, and we went back. We were going to go back to the hotel room. And we get to the elevator hall in the casino floor. And Mac comes walking around the corner again. And we're like, oh, hey, Mac. And he's like, oh, hey, guys. He said, I was hoping I'd bump into you. I was kind of looking for you guys. We're like, you were looking for us? Like, we figured he wouldn't even remember who we were after we, you know, walked away. And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, here's the deal. The big finale show for the convention is going on in the Jubilee Theater tonight. And he said, I can't make it to that show. I've got something else going on. And he said, I've got a ticket to the show, but I've only got one ticket. But he said, I have an idea on how I can get both of you guys in with that one ticket. Like, oh, really? Okay. Well, how's that? So he said, what you guys do is when right around 6:30, I think the show starts at 7 or whatever it was. He said, there's going to be a big group. I mean, this is the big finale show. Everybody's going to be out there. He said, take my ticket and go up and, he said they'll tear the ticket in half or something. But he said, go ahead and let him tear the ticket in half. He said, do you know who Daryl is? And we said, yeah, we know who Daryl is. Daryl was a very well-known close-up magician who we had seen lecture at the Magic Manor shop when we were kids. And he said, well, Daryl and I are going to be sitting at the same table. he knows. I've already talked to him about this. He said, whoever goes in with the ticket, just go to Daryl. He'll give you his ticket stub, walk out with it, hand it to the other guy, and then you can both walk in. And he said, there's always some extra chairs at the tables. So
Cool.
we said, okay, all right, we'll give it a shot. So we decided Todd was going to be the one to go in. He was going to take the risk and go in. And I was nervous because, like I said, I was like 4 months away from being 21.
Right.
And I had already been kicked out of like 3 casinos because I was playing the slot machines, and then somebody would card us because we looked young. I'd be like, no, I'm not 21. So hey, you got to get out of here. And Bally's was the first one I got kicked out of. So
troublemaker.
Yep. So I'm like, oh shoot, if we get kicked out, if we get busted with this, we're in big trouble.
You know, when I was bartending out there were a few people that tried to do that and, hit the slots. And they would hit it, and then they're like, "Oh, we can't win, Dad! Hurry up, and sit down."
Yeah, right.
The cameras got you. You can't get away with that. If you're not 21, you don't win it.
Oh yeah. So we were. I was a little on edge because I didn't want to get busted again.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a pretty cool story.
But yeah, it worked. Todd, he went in, found Daryl. He came out. I'm standing there nervous, and he comes out. And he's standing at the top. There's that little stairway that goes up to the Jubilee Theater entrance. And he comes out and he looks at me and he just gets this grin on his face and he holds up the ticket stub and he walks over hands and we go both walk back in and we get to watch the show. So
cool.
Yeah,
that sounds like one of your more favorite stories.
Yeah. It was one of my favorite stories for sure. And I've had the chance to talk to and hang out with Mac many times since then. He's a really super guy.
Well, cool. Well, one more question about that before we get to your voiceover stuff.
Sure.
And that is, what is the? You just mentioned the convention and everything. What is the camaraderie like amongst magicians? Like, who you've met, how you guys stay in touch and help each other out, and maybe a couple more of the favorite people you've met.
Yeah, so with magic, there's that whole 6 degrees of separation thing with people. Well, I always say that with magicians, it's more like 2 degrees of separation. Pretty much, if you mention seeing a magician and you know their name, pretty much anywhere, chances are I've either met the person or I know somebody who's met that person.
Sure.
It's a brotherhood and sisterhood now because fortunately, many more females are getting into magic. It used to be super dominated by white men, and that was it, like old white guys. That was pretty much it. And now so many other people are getting into magic. There are a lot more female magicians and everything, and we all kind of know each other. I mean, the Society of American Magicians is one national group. Almost every city has its own magic club where everybody kind of gets together, and it's neat because we're all a tight-knit group. We all know each other, and even if we're in competition with each other because we work in the same area, we're friends and we get along and we help each other out. Like, for example, we used to have, and I think we talked about this before, earlier, we used to have a magic club here in Rockford called the Rockford Round Table, and there were about 20 guys. Most are, hobbyists, amateurs. Handful of us were professional magicians, and we would get together once a month in town in Rockford. And the club kind of fell apart over the years because the guy who was the president, my good friend that I've known since I pretty much started since I was about 12 years old, Mike Winters, who goes by the name Magic Mike long before the movie came out. Gets a lot of mileage out of that joke now, though.
I bet,
but yeah, he was the president of the club, and he was the first of us and the longest running to be a full-time pro in the area. And he's on the verge of retirement now. But even though the club fell apart because he didn't have time to be president anymore and he had cancer and everything, we decided to dissolve it instead of finding a new president. But we still we're getting together tonight, as a matter of fact. We get together once or twice a year. Tonight just happens to be the night that we're getting together. We meet out at Buffalo Wild Wings for dinner, and we spend a few
Kind of
hours
works
out
out.
there.
You do a magic podcast and then go see your buddies. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So I'll be telling them about it. And then the Rich, the guy who owned the magic shop, it's funny. I was starting to say a funny story about him. When I was a kid, when I first started going to the Magic Manor, I was 11, 12 years old, and my buddy Pete was like, "Hey, this guy's like an old wizard." You know, he had white hair and a big white mustache, and he was very inspired by Doug Henning. He was, from the Doug Henning's time, and Doug Henning was the big famous illusionist in like the 70s. Before
I don't
David.
know that name.
Oh, really? Okay. So yeah, because we're about the same age. Doug Henning was just before our time. People older than us knew about Doug Henning, and then David Copperfield hit the scene, and he kind of took over, and Doug Henning's popularity kind of went out the window after that. But Doug Henning was like a hippie magician, and he was super famous back in the 70s, and and he had a big mustache and long hair and stuff.
Sure.
And he kind of looked like a guru, and but anyway, so Rich was heavily inspired by Doug Henning. And back then, when I was a kid, I thought Rich was like I thought he was an old guy. I thought he was like in his 70s or something. He was the same age as my dad. He was like in his 30s then. And and it's funny because he's still, he lives. Yeah, I know. I told him that a few years ago, and he thought that was hilarious because he's in his 70s. Actually, he's about, what would he be now? Early 80s now, I think. But he still looks the same as he did when I met him when I was 12. Like 40 years ago almost.
Right.
But he was in the club, and he might be there with us for dinner now. And
so you still stay in touch with a lot of those guys, then, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know each other, and most of us, kind of get along. There's like with any group of any kind, there's going to be the people that are don't get along with people as well or whatever. But there's one local guy that I thought was a nice guy that I tried to get him to join the club, and he never would show up, and he was actually a semi-professional, pretty well known in town,
You just have to do your best and do your job of trying to be friendly, and if people don't respond, they don't respond.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so in closing, how would you say how strong the magic business is? I mean, is it something that ain't going away and it's getting stronger and stronger, and you got a future in front of you? And how is it looking out there?
I really hope it's getting stronger and stronger because, of course, my livelihood depends on it.
Sure.
Lately, I just did an adult birthday party over the weekend that they brought it up. This is interesting. I've been getting a lot of inquiries for adult birthday parties and bachelor and bachelorette parties lately, and I was wondering what in the world. I was talking to a buddy.
What kind of tricks are you going to be doing?
It was just weird. Like just in the last 6 months, maybe 4 or 6 months ago or something like that, I started getting this influx of all these inquiries for these types of parties. And I was talking to my buddy, a friend of mine in Madison, my buddy James, who does the same thing as I do. And he said the same thing. He's like, "Man, I'm getting all these bachelor and bachelorette parties and adult birthday parties." And so he texted me like a week ago, and he said, "I figured it out. I know why we're getting all these inquiries." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "I found out that several months ago, somebody posted a video on TikTok of a magician at an adult birthday party, and the video went viral. It had hundreds of thousands of views or something like that. And then
but my imagination is running wild with these parties right now. That's why I'm giggling so much. You can really your show can be completely different. You start getting hired with these.
Yeah. but he said that this thing went viral, and he said that the Cosmo, I guess, did an article on it, and so
Okay.
it became this thing, like,
Nice.
and it's still going on. I'm still getting a lot of inquiries, so I love when things like that happen. It's like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
somebody else's video created free advertising for all of us,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Absolutely.
and it's
Yeah.
been great. So yeah,
Well, it
so
sounds
that's the
like it's
magic.
yeah, it sounds like you got a future in it, and you're gonna keep going. And that apple orchard one sounds really cool, and keep
Yeah,
doing those cruise ships and stuff. So,
right.
yeah, well, congratulations. Sounds like you've had a long career, and you got a future in it, and sounds like you still enjoy it. So, keep up the good work.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's close out on your voiceover work. What's that all about, and how long have you been doing it, and kind of what types of things are you doing with it?
Yeah, the voiceover, it's interesting. When I was uh, early in the magic days, in like
Hmm.
junior high school, I became fascinated with radio. And WZOK in town back
Hmm.
in those days in the late 80s, it was
Yeah.
like that was a big deal. Like
Oh
radio
yeah.
DJs were celebrities, back
Oh yeah.
then. And so I spent one day at BTW's watching a live remote, and I thought that was
Hmm.
super cool. And so I
Hmm.
started calling the radio station and requesting songs. And it
Hmm.
got to the point where I was calling so much they started recognizing my voice, and they kind of knew who I was when I called.
Stalker's back on the
Yeah,
line.
exactly. Who is this weird kid who keeps calling us and requesting songs? And so there was a guy that had started up the evening show. A guy named the name he went by on the radio was Rick Johnson, and this was like late '80s, early '90s. He did the evening weeknight show, and his real name was Walter Flackus. I found out later on that all the radio DJs they use different names on the radio,
Sure.
and so. But his real name was Walter Flackus. And Walter, he was from Chicago. And on the weekends, he'd go back to Chicago and he would play with his industrial rock band. And then on the weekdays, he would spend in Rockford working at the radio station.
Hmm.
So I started I called him so much. He got to know my voice. And he did the thing called the Top 10 at 10 countdown. And every night they would do the top 10 songs and they would have people call in and introduce the songs. And it
Hmm.
got to the point where he was like, hey, why don't you let me record you introducing this song and the next couple of songs, but just do a different voice when you
Hmm.
record them so it'll sound like it's somebody else. So I started coming up with like character voices and started doing I didn't realize at the time I was doing
Hmm.
voice acting. I didn't really think about that.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so as I got older and doing more and more magic shows, after my shows, sometimes people would say to me, hey, have you ever thought about doing like voice acting? You have an interesting voice. I was listening to you talk throughout the show
Right.
and I thought, it reminds me of when I told Walter, that I wanted to be a DJ if the magic thing didn't work out. He said, don't be a radio DJ. That's not where the
Hmm.
money is. The money's in voiceover, doing
Okay.
the commercials and
Right.
and that kind of stuff. So I never really thought anything about that. He just said that. But then I started thinking about it as people were telling me that. And
Hmm.
so from, gosh, what was it? 2010 up into 2021, approximately 2021, 2022, I had started a family and I was working a day job at the Chrysler assembly
Hmm.
plant in Belvedere before it shut down, before I got
Right.
laid off from that. And while I was there, somebody had asked me that same question. Hey, you ever thought about getting into voice acting? So I'm like, I'm going to start looking into that. So
Hmm.
while everybody was listening to, music with earbuds in while working on the cars, I started listening to podcasts and, instructional videos on how to start a voiceover business and how to build a home recording studio, like you see
Sure.
behind me right
Yeah,
here
you got
with
you got
my
the whole you got the whole studio and everything, don't
I
you?
got the whole thing going on here, my microphones and
Nice.
my
The
treated
blue, the
room.
black and blue looks good. I like the
Yeah,
black and
thank
blue.
you. I thank you. I
Yeah,
like the colors of that. So,
yeah.
yeah, so I started learning how it was done and I started taking classes online. There's a
Mhm.
a coach that I connected with in Virginia that I just take classes online with. And I just started learning the business and started promoting myself online and started getting audiobooks. I
Mm.
recorded some audiobooks. Then I started doing like radio commercials and
Okay.
just a variety of other things. Just like,
Hmm.
I mean, I had too much stuff to even
That
mention.
can be, that can be a far reach too because of the internet. You can get probably hired from all over the world, literally,
Yeah.
if not at least the country. You know.
Oh yeah, literally. I have had clients in so many countries. I mean, I get clients. I
Nice.
was doing. I had a regular client in Philippines that I was
Hmm.
doing stuff for on a weekly basis for about 3 or 4. Because this started in 2019 is when I
Okay.
started doing it, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's kind of
Hmm.
it's like it's what I call my side gig. You know, it's
Sure.
my part time job is doing voiceover work, and my
Yeah.
full time job is magic.
Well, anything that adds on to the household income helps, and
Yeah,
especially if you're, something you enjoy doing it. So
right.
what types of voiceover stuff are you doing?
So let's see. I My favorite thing to do is radio commercials
Okay.
because those pay really well and they
Mm,
can I mean I can knock one out in a matter of 10, 15 minutes, like
gotcha.
a
Yeah.
30-second radio spot or something like that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't get as many of those as I'd like to
Sure,
because they're a
sure.
lot of fun. Like for
Hmm.
example, audiobooks are kind of the easiest thing to get, but they're the most
Hmm.
work for the
That's a
least
lot of
money.
work.
Yeah, it's a lot
Yeah.
of work. They take a
Yeah.
long time, and
Hmm.
and I don't like long form narration as much.
Sure.
I used to do, but speaking of long form narration, I used to do a lot of medical e-learning, which
Mm,
around COVID it was huge. I was doing a lot
right.
of that, and those take some time too. I mean, it would take
Hmm.
a couple hours to knock one of those out, but they were really good money when I was
Hmm.
doing those, and they were pretty fun because I learned a lot of
Right.
different terminology, words that I didn't know, because I'd have to look them up and
Hmm.
figure them out.
Hmm.
So there's those. I do character acting. I do video games. I've done a lot of
Mm,
independent video game work.
mm.
Um, I did. There's a video game that was an
Finish
independent one.
him. Is
Yeah,
that your
yeah,
voice? Finish
that kind
him.
of stuff. That kind of stuff. There, yeah, there have been quite a few like just small video games.
Hmm.
I'm a non-union voice actor, so
Okay.
in order to get like the big brand name, the
Hmm.
video games, you pretty much. In fact, that it's funny that the guy that I mentioned earlier, Mark, that was kind of my second business partner doing magic shows that got into music.
Hmm.
He actually works for a fairly large video game company uh, in the states now, and I think I forget where he lives now, is Georgia or something like that. But I contacted him shortly after I started doing this, and I told him, "Hey, I'd love to do some voices for your characters, for your video game characters," and
Hmm.
he wasn't able to like they hire only union voice
Right.
actors for that, so I'm not
Hmm.
able to get those kind of jobs in most
Hmm.
cases.
Right.
So but that's all right. I do,
Uh-huh.
smaller things that they aren't the huge money things like
Hmm.
union jobs are. But yeah, I've done those kind of character voices. I do like YouTube podcast introductions for
Nice.
people,
Help
animations.
me work on mine.
Yeah, there you go. I could definitely do that. Absolutely. So, yeah, I love doing. There are these apps and YouTube channels that have animated series, and
Hmm.
I've gotten some of those where I do like certain characters for these animated series, and
You'll
or
be a
like
guest
kids.
on The Simpsons pretty soon. Yeah.
Yeah, right. There you go. I'd love it. I'd love it. Yeah, I'd love to do something major like that. But I've done like local businesses like Clodius and Company Jewelers, Hachi Sushi and Hibachi Grill, those kind of things like restaurants and jewelry shops and
Right.
local businesses mostly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, how do you get the word out? Where can people find you, and how do people search you on the internet? Give us your either your social media or your website, or where can people find you and hire you?
Yeah, so my website is just tnzmagic.com.
Hmm.
So, and not to be confused with TMZ, the paparazzi. I've been around a lot longer than they have.
Okay. Sure.
TNZMagic.com. And then there's my Facebook page, which I post wherever I'm going to be. I do have a schedule on my website, but I also post like public events that I'm going to be doing on my Facebook page, which is just, I think if you search TNZ Magic on Facebook or facebook.com/TNZ Magic. And then my voiceover website is actually Vozack, Vozack. Come to think of it, is it Vozack.com or Vozack Studio? I can't even think of what it is. I think
Yeah, we'll get it right when I type it into the description for you.
There you
for
go.
your
Yeah,
video.
you can put it on there and it'll show up. But yeah, so that's those are basically the main ways. I need to get better with social media. It's pretty much Facebook is the only one I really know and do. I guess I must be old. And
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Me
you
too.
too.
They're all the same thing, though. You know, there's like
Yeah.
4 of them out there, and it's like you switch over to the other ones, and it's like, dude, it's the same stuff I just saw over here.
Right. It's like, what's the difference? But I
just to
don't know.
get your stuff out to a broader range of people, because there are a lot of people. I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I like this one.
Right. Sure.
You know,
Sure.
so you got to try to spread your wings as much as possible. So
Right. Yeah. So I'm working on that part still, but I'll get there. But yeah.
Well, cool.
So,
well, good luck with everything, man. And thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. And you know what? I feel kind of weird going through and talking about all this magic without showing you anything. Do you want to see something real quick before we close out?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sounds good. So this is something actually it's kind of new that I'm working on. So if it screws up, then maybe we can edit it and
we won't put that one on there.
We won't put it on. But yeah. So I recently found out, speaking of technology earlier, you can get like flashcards printed up of anything that you want. And I love doing card tricks, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to do something that's more custom. And my son's a really good artist. And I had him, this is actually just basic artwork, but I had him draw simple pictures of all 50 states. And I've got these right here.
Oh, yeah.
With the names of the states on them. See a whole bunch of different states.
That's neat.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't need to show them all to you, but you get an idea. I'm going to put them back inside the box here real quick. So what I want you to do, I don't know how many states would you think you've been to?
I have been to 46 out of 50.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you've been to 46 out of 50, that gives you a wide range to think of. So think of just one of those states. Just think of anyone. Don't say it out loud just yet. Just think of any one of the states that you've been to. All right. And it could be your favorite, least favorite one you'd like to go back to. If it were Illinois, it'd be pretty obvious. Nevada would be pretty obvious because I know you lived there too. Okay. Yep. So, what I want you to do is I showed you these flashcards. I just want you to, I don't know if you saw the state you're thinking of when I showed them to you, but I want you to just imagine wherever that might be, that card with the state picture and name on it, wherever it might be in here. I want you to kind of imagine it dematerializing. In fact, I want you to imagine it just sort of flipping over opposite of the rest of the states. Okay. All right. I think it's done. Okay, so for the first time, I'm going to try not to bring these out of your view anymore. For the first time out loud, what is the state that you're thinking of?
You want me to say it?
Yep, you can go ahead and say it.
Wyoming.
Interesting. Okay. Now, we didn't prearrange or set this. I didn't tell you we were going to do this trick or anything like that. Okay, very good. So I'm going to take all of these out of here. Try not to take them out of your view. Now, I'm going to show you again, but there's one state that's right on top here that's facing the opposite direction of all the rest of the states. All these are different. They're all different, right? But there's one here. So one is facing the opposite direction. You saw it dematerialize and you thought of Wyoming, and that is the one that I've got right here. There we go.
That's some voodoo stuff, man. You cheated. How'd you cheat to do that?
Isn't that wild? That's funny. Yeah. Wyoming's a good one. Nobody ever picks that, but the last time the adult birthday party I did the other day, They picked Wyoming. I'm realizing that was the
Well,
state that they picked.
You know what, that popped in my head because one of my first things that I really insisted on going to was to go see Yellowstone. I love to
okay.
see all the national parks. I'm a big national park kid.
Sure.
And I've been there twice now, but the first time I was all excited to go see there, wanted to go see it. And I have I've been wearing, since it was one of the first, I've been wearing all my old T-shirts to go to the gym. And I've got like 5 of them that have got Yellowstone on it, just because they're like my oldest T-shirts. So that's kind of why Wyoming popped in my head.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's funny.
Yeah, now, how often I was just laughing at you just now, just because I was picturing the kids going, "Oh, no way!" How often do you get like the little kids or even adults freaked out, going, "There's no way you could have done that," or the religious people again, "That's voodoo. How you can't be doing that."
It happens. I have been accused of having supernatural powers, which I don't. At least not that I'm aware of anyway. If I do, I'm not aware of it. But
you're not Harry Potter or nothing?
Not Harry Potter, no. But yeah, sometimes people freak out. I love the different reactions that I get from people. Sometimes people just take off running and screaming, and sometimes people just stare at me like it's one of those things where I will be performing for an audience, and there's always at least one person, it's usually a dude, sitting out in the audience, arms folded, just staring at me, never cracking a smile, never showing any expression on their face. And I think they're just hating the show. So I'm trying to play to that person. Like, I'm trying to get this person to crack a smile, laugh at a joke or something. And for some reason, it seems like that one person is always the first person to come up after the show and say, "Hey, that was a great show. I really enjoyed it." And I just want to say, why didn't you show me that you were enjoying it during the show?
You were making me sweat thinking I was failing,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I just also started picturing that when they're at the zoo and they're messing with the monkeys and the chimps and doing magic in front of them. They're like, "No way!"
Yeah.
They start going all nuts because you freaked them out.
And that sort of thing. You asked about the reactions. That sort of thing kind of it influences my show. Like with my family shows with kids, especially, I've noticed kids nowadays, because of the internet and YouTube and TikTok, kids aren't as used to live entertainment as they used to be. So the concept of applause is like dying. Like people don't really realize
they don't know to clap. They don't know to clap
anymore.
Huh,
what they do instead, when they see something that they're amazed by, what kids do nowadays is they go, "What?" Like that.
Okay,
what?
Sure.
So that's the thing that they do. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to use that to my advantage. So now what I do is I do my opening routine, and usually somebody will, and so I make that part of that's my introduction to my show. I say, I introduce myself, and I say, if you like magic, let me hear you clap really, really loud. Oh, that's my favorite sound in the whole world. But there's another sound that I heard some of you making there. That first part, it goes like this. It goes, "What?" Everybody give it a try. Everybody go, "What?" So I get everybody doing that.
Incorporated into the show.
Yeah, and it becomes like a theme throughout the show. If they're not clapping, they're saying, "What?" So it became a fun part of the show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for at least doing one for me. I'll put some try to tack some videos onto the end so people could see a couple of them in action.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it very much, man. And I try to do this again maybe next summer or something.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come back.
All right. Thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you. It's good talking to you.